It is Monday after a Sunday fight night in America where Jake Paul took on Tyron Woodley in arguably the most anticipated fight of the summer. I don't know if everyone would agree. On this episode of ESBR Recap, we are joined by the usual preview show host, Paul Kelly. Paul, how are you?
Right, Sam, how's it going? I'm good, thanks. Yes, I'm my first review show. I'm excited.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you excited to finally actually review a card instead of giving predictions and looking at the card ahead?
Yeah, I don't have to put my neck on the line as much. Just talk about what's already happened, so it's a wee bit easier.
Yeah, that's what we just said. It is actually kind of easier sometimes, these review shows, because it is just looking forward and talking about what's happened. So obviously we are going to concentrate on the Showtime and BT Sport card last night, where Jake Paul came away with another victory, this time a split decision over UFC star Tyron Woodley. Paul, how much did you enjoy the fight? Like, what are your initial thoughts on last night?
I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. To be honest with you, I think that it is what it is. I know that's cliche to say, but I wasn't expecting it to be, a fight of the year contender or whatever. So in terms of that, then maybe yeah, it was fine. It was all right because I knew it wasn't going to be anything special. Um, as a spectacle, I thought it was good. The arena looked packed out. There's a lot of noise. Seemed like all the fans and stuff were hyped. So as an event, it looked pretty good. Undercard again, seemed to be a bit of noise even for the British fellas. Which we'll come on to later. Sure, very different performances from them. And yeah, I think that the fight was a bit dull. There were a few moments, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, I didn't find it, oh, that's an amazing fight. But sure, what were we expecting? What about you? Did you enjoy it?
I thought it was interesting. The fight probably, I think in any fight where there's that kind of like build up in it, there was a big build up whether you like it or not. I think it's always probably going to disappoint. Like it's very rare like those big fights actually do live up to the billing, and I think it was all right. Like it was an okay. I think the undercard actually was quite good. I didn't mind some of the fights on the undercard. I think it was quite interesting, especially for an American undercard. Like they're not the same as we get in Britain. Usually the American undercards are quite light, and they up till like the co-main event, they're just guys you've not really heard of. So for like Amanda Serrano, Tommy Fury, and Daniel Dubois to be on the undercard is quite impressive. And obviously there was some good performances, some not so good performances on the undercard. For me, Jake Paul's very clever. Like, let's be honest. I think the way he handpicks opponents, I think we've seen it again, how he handpicked Tyron Woodley. Were you a little bit disappointed? I know you were a big Woodley advocate, being a big UFC fan. And were you a little bit disappointed by Woodley's performance?
Yes, in a way, because in the first few rounds, first two especially, I thought, oh no, here we go. This is just continuing on from his last four UFC fights where he lost. What was it? Ariel Helwani said in commentary, he said something like he's lost his last 16 rounds in a row.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, not this again. Please, not this for 8 rounds where he just couldn't pull the trigger or whatever. And obviously, he got more into it. For the first 2 rounds, I was very disappointed in him. Third round, he grew into it. Fourth round was obviously a big round for him. And after the fourth round, I wouldn't say he went all guns blazing because he didn't, but he definitely was more active and threw more shots than I thought he would have, judging off the first half of the fight or the first few rounds. I know we're going to come on to it later. I was disappointed slightly in his performance, but then I was also a wee bit disappointed in the decision. I'm not going to say I thought Woodley was robbed, but I, I think it could have been. I think he could have been given the decision. Because I want to talk about that moment in the fourth round a bit later with you as well, because I have a few opinions about that.
I think for me, like I kind of get where one judge gave it to Woodley, but I do think Jake Paul's jab probably won in the fight, and I think that was the shot that won in the fight. I think it meant he controlled it a bit more, and it did feel like, I know that fourth round is the biggest talking point of the night, and it did feel like the fight kind of changed at that point, but was it a little too late for Woodley? I think maybe it is a confidence and a mindset thing. I don't want to overanalyze it, but when you consider, as you say, the last 4 performances, it took that one big shot on to land on Jake Paul for him to kind of like, it felt like he kind of woke up and it kind of like realized, actually, yeah, I can do this and I can like hurt people. Again, and later in the fight, he kind of, whether he was worried about the counter, right, whatever you might say, I think he definitely looked a different fighter from that point on. I don't know whether it is a mindset thing and a confidence thing or what.
I don't know. It was he's it's difficult to know because we were talking about it before, and you don't know where his headspace is at. At 39, nearly 40 years old,
He was in great
coming
shape,
off 4 losses. Oh yeah, that's what. See, I was delighted to see that for the weigh-in because I knew he's Woodley. I can't believe he ever made 170 pounds, to be honest with you. But and I knew he would be come in shape because like we touched on it before. I feel like we just knew he had too much pride. He's a former UFC champion. So there was a funny comparison I saw on Twitter. It was when Tyron Woodley was still the UFC welterweight champion. Jake Paul had just had his first fight against Deji.
Oh, so, yeah.
That was brilliant.
I think
really
also
interesting to see that they obviously ended up fighting.
When Woodley first won his UFC belt, I think Jake Paul was on Disney, wasn't he? Or when he first fought in the UFC, Jake Paul had just started on Disney, which is mad. And you have got to respect Jake. You have got to respect Jake Paul for how far he has come, and he has. I think last night he did show that he does belong in there a little bit because I think it's all right, like starching basketballers in the second round and first round. Like there's only so long that can last, and I think to actually get hit with a shot from a UFC welterweight champion, one of the all-time greats, and kind of come back and not drop down, not get knocked down, or not even look that phased. I think, and by his own admission, it wasn't the best performance, but he did kind of come through some adversity where a lot of people thought if he gets hit, it's this rich kid, gets everything handed to him, he'll just crumble. And he kind of proved everyone wrong in that sense, where he kind of like didn't crumble and he lasted the whole fight and he won the fight, whether it was close or not. He still kind of lasted and still won the fight, and was still kind of throwing decent shots in the 7th and 8th.
Yeah, no, he did. You got to take your hat off to him. As much as I may not like him, I do take up my hat to him. And even the fact that he said he was taking, a smaller purse to give everybody else.
Yeah, and I think that
might have been the biggest purse of their career. Like that says something about the star power and the draw that he has. Because there's not. He must be, obviously we don't really know the figures, but he must be getting a serious amount of money then for that. Because he'd be the highest probably paid on that card, and with the least boxing experience, okay, bar Tyron Woodley, if you're counting his fighting background, but it's funny. You have to take your hat off to him, and at the end of the day, you look at Paul on BoxRec or whatever, and he's 4-0 now as a professional cruiserweight, so you can't really argue with that, I suppose.
Do you want to see a rematch between them? I know personally I could not think of much worse than seeing them fight again. I think it loses a bit of it loses the actual appeal, whatever appeal it did have if they do fight again. I think I want to kind of see Jake Paul like not push on. Let's hold off on talking, get Canelo's name out your mouth. Even Conor McGregor, let's get his name out your mouth for a little bit at least.
Yeah.
Do you want to see the rematch, or are you a bit more optimistic about that than me?
Still, as a Woodley super fan, I wouldn't mind it, but I don't even know if much would change in the second. I feel like maybe Jake Paul could learn more about Tyron Woodley than Tyron Woodley could learn about Jake Paul in the second fight if it was to happen again.
Yeah.
However, I knew I was going to say it, and just before I forget, that moment in the 4th when Woodley landed that big shot, for me, that has to count as a knockdown.
Yeah, and watching it back, the ropes held him up, and in boxing,
exactly.
that is a knockdown. So Would
Yeah.
that have changed the
So
outcome? You just don't know. It's hard to say. I think you don't know how Paul would have come back. Would the 10-second count have helped him recover a little bit? You don't know. Sometimes it can help. But yeah, I do think that probably should have been a knockdown. I do
and
agree
then
with
there's two sides to that. There's two sides to that then, isn't there? Because Woodley, he knocked him down. So you say, oh, look, Jake Paul, he's been hit with a big shot and he went down. I know he didn't actually go down, but for this argument, he did because the ropes held him up. But then on the other side of the coin, you could say, well, he got knocked down supposedly, had what 4.5 rounds left to go. He survived and arguably won another couple of rounds. So it shows that he has
Yeah, exactly.
his good chin, good engine, can come back from a bit of adversity. So yeah, I don't really want to dwell too much on it and give him too much praise, but fair play to the kid.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, isn't it? I get why people don't like it. I don't get the over the top slating it. I think this is kind of where this sport is at the moment. I think we were saying it does kind of show the sorry state boxing is in. But then again, it's a good opportunity for some of these fighters. And when guys are getting paid like Tyron Woodley, they deserve it. Like, I'm not going to hold back on Tyron Woodley for making 10 million for 8 3-minute rounds. Like, fair play to you. Like, the UFC quite well publicly known doesn't really pay very well. So the fact that these UFC guys are coming over to fight Jake Paul to get a payday says a lot about the UFC. But yeah, boxing struggling. Let's be honest. There is a number of reasons why boxing is struggling right now. Jake Paul is not one of those reasons. There are more things that I would like to fix about boxing than Jake Paul. Jake Paul can do whatever he wants. There's so much more. There's so many bigger problems in this sport than someone like Jake Paul fighting. And if he wants to get in the ring and fight guys, like, let's let him do it. At the end of the day, just don't watch it. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's all right sitting on Twitter moaning and saying, "Oh, this is awful, ruining the sport." But until we fix the judging problem, the 28 belts per division, the no big name fighting each other, like, that's when you're not going to get casual fans. The fact that Jake Paul's brought in more casual fans and more like non-fans of boxing and had some of the biggest pay-per-views this year kind of shows where boxing is, because we don't get the bigger fights, like the fights that would draw in the kind of more casual fans, as we put it. So yeah, I think there's a lot more bigger problems to than boxing than Jake Paul.
Yeah, I echo what you're saying. Definitely.
So in terms of upcoming fights, I don't really want to go into too detailed on Jake Paul's career, but if he doesn't take the rematch with Tyron Woodley, which let's hope he doesn't in my end, but what would you like to see him do next? What kind of is that the next step up?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to hear other people's opinions on this. But for me, I actually don't mind the Tommy Fury fight if that's something that can happen, because I know you'll get me at this. I'm a good example. Is at the very start, because this has been mentioned a few times before Jake Paul had even had his professional fights, and people were mentioning the potential fight with Tommy Fury. I was like, Tommy Fury knock him out in 30 seconds, just thinking because the stereotypical, oh, he's a boxer. But see, now looking at them, if you actually compare the two of them, they're both essentially novice pros with limited amateur experience. Because I don't think Tommy Fury has a huge lot of amateur experience, and obviously Jake Paul doesn't have any.
Yeah.
So if they're similar age, Tommy Fury's 2 maybe years younger, but Jake Paul's still really young as well. Why not put them in together? I know you've got a few things to say on this as well, but I really don't even mind seeing the fight, because who knows what could happen. It's at this stage of both of their careers, a win over one another would look good on their record. Don't care what you say. Tommy Fury beat Jake Paul. That's the biggest name on his record.
Let's be honest, that's not hard. Like, most people in pro boxing would be the best name on Tommy Fury's record. As long as you haven't lost about 70 fights, you are the best name on Tommy Fury's record. Let's not pretend like he's actually got any credible wins. Like, the only credible wins he's got was over was it Grant on that. He's 2-0, the Scottish Scottish
Yeah.
fighter, and that was on 3 days' notice, and he actually put up a good fight, and he couldn't finish him then. So I think that takes us on quite nicely to be talking about the Tommy Fury fight on last night's card. And I know, without like trying to like say anything bad about Tommy Fury, he seems like a nice guy, but let's not pretend that he's any more of a boxer than Jake Paul at this point. Like, Jake Paul's fought better fighters than Tommy Fury, and it's not even close. Like, look at his record. Like, you've got the first guy on there was 10-102. Like, fair play for him to still be in boxing, by the way. Like, that Latvian fighter, 10-102. Like, at what point do you stop fighting? I don't know. But and then he's got like the guy he fought last night, Anthony Taylor, who at one point when he got cut by Bellator was 2-5 in MMA, and he might have had the shortest reach in that division, and he weighed so much less and was so much smaller than Tommy Fury, and Tommy Fury still couldn't finish him. We were talking on the preview show actually about. I know you said like this is a great move by Frank Warren, and it makes a change for Frank Warren to kind of be like pushing his fighters in other areas. And I don't know, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but for me, it's actually hurt Tommy Fury, that fight. He was the first fight of the night, like, and just look at Twitter, like, American Twitter is slating Tommy Fury because of that performance. And yeah, he got the win, but he's not tearing up any trees, beating a guy who had one boxing fight and lost, and a pretty average professional MMA background. And he outpoints him, like, and he didn't look that dangerous all night. So I think he actually hurt his kind of stock. Like, I don't know, just looking at like social media this morning, I don't think the American fans were that impressed. I know a lot of American fans kind of slated him because he does come with the Fury name, doesn't he? Like, they were expecting this absolute monster, and Frank Warren has built him out to be this monster, but until he gets a credible win, he is a reality TV star that does boxing.
Yeah. I can't really do anything but agree with you there, because I know I said, and talk about Daniel Dubois, I think there's a good example of both sides of the coin, because I think you're probably right. Pre-fight, I didn't really think, unless Tommy Fury completely stank the place out, that he would do anything bad for his reputation, but he kind of did stink the place out. So he might have tarnished his reputation a little bit. And as you say, you look on social media this morning and search Tommy Fury, and all you see is
they're clowning him,
like not pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they are. I know. Well, if I was him, I wouldn't be searching my name on Twitter anytime soon. Put it that way.
It doesn't help when you look like Hercules and you can't knock out a guy who's 5'11" and has an 11-inch reach disadvantage over you. It doesn't look great.
Yeah, it hasn't helped him at all. So I do have to agree with what you said. I think like Tommy Fury now, even though he's fighting nobody, so to speak, he actually does need a statement now, because he's kind of going backwards a little bit.
Yeah,
like
I think his name still holds weight, but it can only hold so much weight from Love Island for so long. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's why I think the Jake Paul Tommy Fury fight. Why not?
Yeah.
Who would you make a favorite in that fight? If I'm making you a bookmaker, who's the favorite?
You know my answer to this. That's why you said that. Jake Paul. Like, if you just put the two resumes back side by side, and I took the names off, and you take away the Fury surname, and you take off Jake Paul and Disney superstar, you look at the two records, and you pick Jake Paul's going to win. Like, how can you not? He's beaten a wrestler in Ben Askren, but he's still a fighter. Like, he's still tough as anyone. He's beaten Tyron Woodley. It wasn't his best performance, but he still beat him. Like, obviously the other ones you can disregard, but Fury's not beaten anyone. Like, it's zero. It's 2 good wins to 0 good wins. So, like, in that sense, I'd make Jake Paul quite a handed favorite. And I know we said we don't put our neck out on the line in review shows, but I actually do think that Paul beats Fury easier than he did Woodley. Like, I think he outpoints him a lot more comfortably than he did with Woodley. And I don't know if that's a bold prediction or what, but that is what I think.
That's bold prediction. That's a bit of an understatement. Yeah. Could you imagine that actually happened though? Imagine Jake Paul fought Fury and won. Like what?
The only thing I think that Fury is good at, he feints a lot. He can make you bite on punches, and if he does land, he obviously does have power. Like, I'm not taking that away from him. And naturally, if look at the natural talent that both guys have, and both guys do have some natural ability. Fury should win, but I've just got to base it off like what we've seen in the professional ring. And at this point, Jake Paul's been in bigger fights than Tommy Fury. He's been under that bright light against pretty much every fight he's been in. Everyone wants him to lose every time. He's handled the pressure pretty well. And so far, we've not seen much from Tommy Fury against anyone credible to actually kind of like predict him to win.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about the resumes as well. I mean, me personally, I still think Tommy Fury would beat him, but then I don't know whether that's just because I'm going off the headspace of the fact that I want to believe that he's, a proper boxer.
Yeah.
But yeah, time will tell. It'd be interesting to see if that fight actually ever does happen, or if it's just a load of smokescreen or whatever. But
yeah. And I do want to say, I will want Tommy. If that happens, I want Tommy Fury to win. Let's not get me. I'm not like supporting Jake Paul here. Like, I want Tommy Fury to knock him out, but I just got to look at it objectively on the two resumes as we've got them right here in front of us now. That's just So obviously on the other side there we had Tommy Fury, but we also had Daniel Dubois, who did set himself up well on the American stage. Obviously got the first round knockout win, called out Trevor Bryant, which is, I think, is actually a really, really good fight. What did you make of the short Daniel Dubois performance?
I think he really did all that all that he could do. He couldn't have done any more. He knocked him down 2-3 times before you stopped him. And that's inside the first round. You know what I mean? You literally cannot do any better than a first round knockout. So fair play to him. I know the opponent wasn't up to much, but if you're an American fan of Jake Paul who's going to watch Jake Paul, but you happen to be there early, and you said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to watch these two British fellas, that Fury fella and that Dubois fella. I've heard things about them," and you watch both of them. You're not impressed by Fury at all. You watch Dubois and you think, you know what, I wouldn't maybe keep an eye on him to see. I wouldn't mind seeing who he fights next or following his career slightly, because he did all he needed to do, got the stoppage, and it's good to see him winning again.
Yeah, one thing as well I think is actually quite clever from Showtime was putting Fury at the first fight, and then obviously you had Jake Paul at the main event. So Tommy Fury is a big name on this card. He probably was the biggest name outside of the main event, and to put him on first, you kind of did attract people to watch the whole card. So that kind of translates onto people like Daniel Dubois, who put on a performance like that. You really are kind of like gaining people traction, and it's kind of the opposite. You look on social media this morning, everyone loving Daniel Dubois and thinking he's brilliant. Again, the only question mark on Daniel Dubois is his fights. Again, it's the typical Queensberry Frank Warren of let's build them up as slow as we possibly can. And obviously the Joe Joyce loss kind of like showed that he wasn't quite ready. But again, he's done all he can now. He's probably a bigger name after last night, and I think I am actually quite excited to see what he does again.
Yeah, for sure. Bar the Joe Joyce fight, you've watched Daniel Dubois and he's knocked out literally every opponent, and it's been exciting. I know we say sometimes he's been fighting tin cans, but you watch him, don't you?
Yeah.
Because he's got a big punch. He can box a bit. I enjoy watching Dubois. And like you said there, the calling out Trevor Bryan, that's not. I would like to see that fight.
Didn't that fight get called by the WBA for one of the Joshua's belts as a final eliminator? Was it the WBA? I think it was.
Is that right? Did it?
Yeah, I think it was Dubois, because Dubois held the WBA International, I think, and he got called against Trevor Bryant. He definitely got called against Trevor Bryant for one of Joshua's belts.
Well, there you go. I mean, I still think it's too early for that, in my opinion. But yeah, fair play to him. He's doing all he can do. All he needs to do is keep winning, and 2020. I don't think next year, but 2023, you could be seeing Daniel Dubois challenging for world honors for sure.
Yeah, and that Joe Joyce loss doesn't look as bad or doesn't. It never looked bad. Like I think we've got to respect Joe Joyce, but Joe Joyce is now being talked about in that top 10 world heavyweights, which I think is where he deserves to be. And Daniel Dubois is still young. Like I don't think that loss will hold him back or kind of like downplay his whole career. I think he will go on, and I think he still will probably win a world title. Obviously, if those belts ever get broken up and split up, I think he is in quite a good place. If he does stay active and he does get some more fights, because he is a fun fighter, as you say. And I think everyone does tune in to watch Daniel Dubois. So that has been. Sorry.
I just quickly want to add, only 30 seconds. I think that with Dubois being with Shane McGuigan now, it's hard to see the big progress that he's making, but he's clearly making a little bit of progress. It's the same as Lawrence Okoli. I know you can't really take much off a first round stoppage, but the fact that he's knocking him out in the first round, fair play to him. He's clearly working a little bit with Shane, and we all know Shane's a good coach, so hopefully he can make Dubois better, and there's some more big, compelling fights to come in the career of Daniel Dubois. Yeah,
definitely echo that. And Shane McGuigan is one of the best trainers in the world, and I think a lot of fighters would do good just going to a trainer like Shane McGuigan. So I think that is where we will end this ESBR recap. Obviously, some of you might not have enjoyed the Tyron Woodley Jake Paul assessment. I think we went quite in depth for a Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight, which might not be everyone's cup of tea, but we do try and review every fight. And Paul and myself will be back tomorrow previewing more of a hardcore boxing fans card this week, and it is a really, really good card, so you won't want to miss that. The Lara Warrington 2 card, a lot of question marks on that card, lots of great fights. You can check out Greg's prediction video for that fight. Obviously, it is a 50-50 fight. Will it be repeat? Will it be revenge? See what Greg had to say. That is on the channel right now. Paul, yourself have an interview out with Eric Donovan, who's fighting this Saturday, which was, again, a really good listen. So check that out on the channel. That went out today. Thank you, Paul, for joining us. Thank you guys for watching. We do this every week, so please try and hit subscribe and check more out if you did enjoy it. And we'll see you later.